All right, guys. So today's episode is to serve a couple purposes. To let's just go to the slide here. It's the Road to Freedom show because this is going to be public. I'm going to put this one up on YouTube as a way to give people a public sample of the Road to Freedom show, and to give me a place to send people that continuously ask me on Twitter or Facebook what my position about cryptocurrencies is, because I've changed it. I'm changing my opinion quite a few times, actually, which looks like I'm a little bit crazy or wishy-washy, but it's not that at all. I saw some really awful things inside of it and made me completely change my mind. But those awful things have been solved in a lot of ways now. So I want to talk about that, and so people can understand at least my opinion, if you give a shit about my opinion at all. But regardless of my opinion, I've got some stuff that I've seen that are facts that is not my opinion, that there's some giant problems with blockchain and crypto, that some hurdles that still yet to be solved yet. It still is the future. I mean, it really is blockchain at least, but not until everything goes to zero and everybody hates it. That's what's ironic about it. So we're going to talk about that today. So episode 10 today is crypto good or evil, and why it's changed my opinion from scam to potentially world changer. So, and I've got my brother Dr. Jason Trainer on here. He's here to kind of fill in some gaps, because I've been deep in the crypto world for quite a while now, and I just want Jason to help me backfill some of this stuff, because I don't even know what your level of crypto knowledge is, and it doesn't even matter what level it is, because whether you're an expert or you're a complete newbie with it, Jason, you can help me fill in some gaps, because we're going to talk about some very, very deep subjects that not many people think about, and where the world is moving and how crypto impacts it and all this stuff. And it's a lot of technical talk too. So what is your, first of all, let's just start. What's your opinion in the crypto, just real quickly, crypto space, and what's your level of knowledge with it?
Well, my level of knowledge is probably I know very little, but I probably have to give myself some credit, because I consider myself pretty well read. But when it comes to the crypto space, obviously, I posted on our Road to Freedom Slack channel some stuff about this. And I think it's really interesting, the timing of this coming out, because there's a lot of talk about in the Fed and things like that. And so I honestly see the promise of crypto in the sense of, decentralizing the power, because, money is power, right? So I see the incredible value in it. Obviously, though, that there's a lot of things there that are concerning to me, trusting that, hey, Bitcoin can't be hacked, with the power and the resources and the will of a government that's losing control. Is that true? And so that, I have some concerns about it, about what we've kind of been led to believe about it, but I see the value in it. So I'm mixed on it. So I'm pretty open.
Okay, well, that's good. All right, that's perfect. So you can help me fill in some gaps where probably a lot of people that will see this may not understand. So first of all, parental advisory. Some of this may not be family-friendly content. I curse once in a while, F-bombs drop, and I have crude sense of humor once in a while. We'll keep it to a minimum, but this is not family-friendly content. It's business, so wake the fuck up. All right, so disclaimer, typical disclaimer, do your own research. None of this is financial or legal advice. No expectation of profits. All of my own opinions, all of our own opinions here, and so do your own research. So first of all, let's start off with, what does Bitcoin even solve? That's the big thing. Everybody thinks it creates, well, the crypto Twitter world, which is kind of like the underbelly, for lack of a better term, of the whole space, where it's a bunch of shit talkers that, you know, either praising Bitcoin as, you know, everything, or the people that think it's all a scam and a fraud. So what you find there is the Bitcoin maximalists. Just for the record, I think I'm pretty close to becoming a Bitcoin maximalist again. This is a full swing even from just a few days ago. And you'll understand why by the time we get done with this. I just had some huge epiphanies, and mostly I found a group of people that are working on the core of all this stuff that see things the way I do. So I know I'm not fucking crazy. So anyway, what does Bitcoin solve? It's supposed to be the next digital gold, right? It's scarce, right? Which we'll talk about in a second, which is not necessarily a good thing. Sounds great, right? Gold's good because it's scarce, right? Well, there's a huge problems with that too, which we're going to see in a second. And so it doesn't necessarily solve that. And if it does solve it, it does. Having another form of gold doesn't create the situation that you think it does. And they're proud of the fact that it's deflationary because of that. Well, I'm here to tell you, you need some inflation. You really do. It's what makes expansion and growth happen. You have to have a growing monetary supply in some way to be able to create growth. And so, and then does it solve a centralization problem? We're going to talk a lot about that. So centralization, I mean, Bitcoin got centralized so fucking fast and made your head spin. It's not decentralized at all. It's completely centralized by a few big mining farms in China. A lot of them get free power paid for by the government. Some get very cheap power or hydroelectric power that they're not paying for. And they get able to expand and grow in these big mining farms. And then Bitcoin evolved into something that wasn't even meant to be the original way that the Satoshi Nakamoto's anonymous white paper was written. It's nothing like that. It turned into another fucking central bank with Bitcoin written on it. Yeah, it's blockchain, but it's really slow. It doesn't scale. And it's nowhere, it just turned into something else. So we didn't solve the centralization problem at all. It's completely centralized. It's almost more centralized even than our Federal Reserve System, because at least there's a whole bunch of competing companies in there. There's more of those than there are big server farms controlling Bitcoin. That's for sure. So censorship. It's supposed to be decentralized, so it should be censorship free. Well, I've personally been censored the very first time I ever posted on fucking Steemit, which is supposed to be a decentralized, social media thing. It's completely not. It's the opposite. It's all these little fiefdoms that everybody had built on top of blockchain and called it decentralized when it's a fucking joke. It's not at all. All of it's centralized in some fashion. Proof of stake, which we'll talk about, is bullshit because you're just setting up another layer, another form of another central banking system. I mean, what's different than so the way that graphene, BitShares, anything that's proof of stake, algorithm, EOS is the biggest one. So anything that Steemit is the one we just talked about. Anything that runs on those proof of stake things, it's just another central banking system, because in those you have 21 oracles, they call them, or verifiers, or whatever fucking name they give them, and you got to vote their way up. And then you got all this political stuff with people buying votes and all this shit. It's just another political system, and then you're supposed to trust these 21 validators or oracles to manage, and verify transactions. So everybody gets this fast speed because there's all of a sudden only 21 nodes verifying instead of the whole chain, which is great for speed. But how is that any different than, I got to go trust Bank of America that they've got the money that's tied to the Federal Reserve System? It's the same fucking thing. And guess what? At least I can go to a Bank of America branch and bitch at a manager or something, but I can't go to EOS. What are you going to do? they've got offices, I guess, but shit, man, good luck with any of that. So censorship is not a thing. I mean, censorship has happened big time. I mean, right out of the gate, whenever EOS was launched, they had this giant problem where censorship happened. People they didn't like had their accounts and money fucking stolen and moved and shifted around. They forked the fucking thing. That's not decentralized. That's got you a few power players in the middle deciding what's happening. That's what happened with Bitcoin. That's what's happened with any of the graphene-based stuff, which includes EOS, BitShares, all that stuff, Steemit. What's the other one there? DTube or whatever the hell their video one is. What you've got is a cool idea, but then you got a whole bunch of people that don't get it or are intentionally defrauding people because they do get it and created their own little thing around it. And then they create this another layer of tokenizing everything and doing ICOs, you know, which sounds good on the surface, but whenever you really boil it down, there's nothing there for lots of reasons. So we'll cover all that stuff. So any of that stuff that's gotten wrapped around all of this has created a derivatives market now. So the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the CME, stepped in and created a futures contracts around it. So the CBOE, and I predicted on December 5th of 2017, when the market meaning Bitcoin, all the cryptos are going straight up. I said, this thing's going down. I posted it on Facebook publicly. It's still up there. 2 weeks before this happened, I said December 17th or 18th, I can't remember which one it was, December 17th or 18th. I said, this thing's going to top out and it's going down. Why? Because that's when the CME futures contracts started trading on Bitcoin. I've seen this play happen. It's what goes on in the gold market. That's exactly how gold markets work, is they've got futures contracts that trade against what's supposed to be a spot market, but the spot market isn't even, you're not even actually trading actual gold. There's not gold bars that move from somebody's account to your account. No, you're trading paper, and it's paper that's on top of paper. It's paper based on other paper. It's all a bunch of digitized derivatives. So you got these derivatives markets trading against a futures markets that has contracts that expire. So what they do is they fluctuate and play with all these prices, and what they can do with there is move that thing wherever they really want it to go. And by they, I mean the central banks, Federal Reserve, the people that are in power that actually have control of this thing. This whole thing is really a giant manipulation machine. The prices of gold have been suppressed and manipulated for at least 30 years, at least in the 70s, well, maybe 40 years. Shit, I don't know. As long as they've been able to control it electronically, it's all paper. Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets are the exact same fucking thing right now, except worse, because at least there is some semblance of somebody pretending to regulate the stock market and the gold market and, you know, commodities markets. But there's nothing in the cryptocurrency world. So what you've got is, what happened is you've got real on-chain cryptocurrency. Just stick with Bitcoin for now. Whenever you go to buy that, you're buying access to just really a database entry, essentially, right? But that means you get an on-chain transaction. It becomes yours. When you go in and go trade through an exchange that everybody thinks they're trading, they're not actually making trades back and forth on the blockchain of real Bitcoin. No, they've created derivatives contracts around this, just like they do with gold. And then they trade these derivatives contracts back and forth. So whenever you're trading on these exchanges, you're trading bullshit. You're not trading anything real. You're trading something that's built to look like it's crypto. And it's super easy to pull the wool over everybody's eyes because not many people think about it. Not really many people get it. But when you look at the actual transactions on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain itself, look at the blockchain explorer and look at the actual transactions versus the transactions, the amount of volume that's happened in the exchanges, it's like 10%. So 90% of the volume you're seeing on all these exchanges is bullshit. It's a lie. It's manipulation. It's a lot of the big players actually that are in control of these big futures contracts at CME and CBOE that are now taking over Bitcoin, and they're driving that all over. You know why? Because Bitcoin is very thinly traded in comparison to other things. Very thinly traded and not widely held. That's the two things you need to have something that's easy to manipulate. So it's been co-opted, and then there's this layer of ICOs, which I've been guilty of myself before I understood it, of ICOs, and then really just the idea there was to go raise an alternative way to raise capital, right? Well, what does that mean? People just want to raise more money. What does that mean? Does that mean that they want more cryptocurrency? No, in the end, they just want more US fucking dollars. They want more fiat. So they don't actually give a shit about the underlying thing. They're trying to get more US dollars, because at the heart of all of us, we've got this greed thing, and I bought into it too. Just going after and doing a big, huge raise and getting a whole bunch of money. Well, okay, well then what? I thought you're all about this currency. The thing is that everybody's just way ahead of themselves with all of this stuff. And it's finally starting to fix itself. And I needed to see a couple of things happen. And I got pretty against all of crypto for a few months now, which is the opposite stance I've had for a while. It's because I saw all of this corruption. So I'm going to bounce back and forth to some of these slides. So we've seen this giant run up in the crypto space. Let's go back. You can see this whole thing. You guys are all familiar with how this has happened. Well, this thing was on some pretty regular, what I would call organic growth until late 2017. And that's whenever the assholes took over and really ruined it. And what I'm talking about here is these guys, Tether and Bitfinex, and a lot of other actors in this. I don't want to dwell on this too much because there's been a whole lot of people researching this. In fact, there's, I thought I had it pulled up. Oh yeah, here it is. I mean, all you got to do is Google, or I'm on DuckDuckGo, but this is a Google search essentially. Tether crypto, you just Google Tether cryptocurrency manipulation, and you can see all kinds of articles. People have researched this. This is a very well-known thing. It's not something like conspiracy theory I'm coming up with. There's even articles on CNBC, and there's one in here that's, there wasn't, I can't remember where it is. Oh, here it is, Business Insider. And there's one on Bloomberg that I saw a while back that's talking about there's a whole, well, actually there's some investigations going on right now at the Department of Justice and the SEC into possible criminal stuff in regards to Tether manipulating. So what's happened with Tether and with utilizing Bitfinex and these exchanges that are connected to Tether, they're able to create a whole bunch of fake money, Tether, and they could just say it's tied to Bitcoin. Well, you have no idea. They're supposed to release audits. Their original website, their original charter, I guess you would say, white paper, said they're going to be completely transparent. You know, it's on blockchain, all this, you know, all the buzzwords that, you know, you're supposed to have this transparency and all these things with the blockchain. And part of that was to release monthly audits, right? Well, they've never had one audit. They've had all kinds of hacks and, you know, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars just missing all of a sudden, still no audits. And then right here, they're constantly like, they get this transparency update, this proof of funds. But if you go here, it's bullshit. And what it really boils down to is the people behind this are not good people, and they're going to end up in jail. There's been a whole lot of research into this. So what they've done through Block One and others, they ran this price up through manipulation, got a hold of the crypto world and made everybody start believing in all these exchanges again after the Mt. Gox hack, which wasn't really a hack. After that disaster, they threw, a lot of making manipulation again, making the price rise up, and, through some good marketing, were able to get people excited about it. And, there is something real here. So there is some organic excitement about what's going on with crypto. I don't want to shit on it too much because I am a pro crypto guy, as you'll see, but I'm anti what's happened to it and what needs to happen with it being cleared out. Because there's some fucking assholes in this space that are only in there to enrich themselves and to make themselves look better than what they are and all that stuff. And it's gotten dirty and nasty and ugly. And so through the use of Tether and all these connected exchanges, and able to do things like wash trading. Wash trading is basically you create a bunch of fake trades. So they have trading bots. There's all kinds of trading bots, but they have internal trading bots they've created that do wash back and forth, buy and sell orders, just like a washing machine, just throwing them back and forth, washing. So there's no actual movement. So it's a wash. Everything's a wash. That's where it comes from. And but what it is it creates this fake volume. So it looks like there's trading going on, and they can do it in such a way that it looks like you can't tell when you're looking at the order books and you're watching the price move. You can't tell. So they do wash trading, and then they do another thing called spoof trading. Spoof trading is where they put in fake trades and then pull them out at strategic times. So the good example is if a market's moving up through some sort of way, through their own manipulation or whatever, they can put in the order books, they can put in a giant trade above where the market is right now. And so everybody that's a seasoned trader sees a big trade that's sitting there waiting at a certain price. So they're wanting to drive the price up to there, right? Or get in below that price because they're like, well, big money, it's big smart money knows where it's going, and they got a big order here. So if they go there, it should go up, right? Well, if that order is a spoof, it's bullshit. So what happens is it gets up to that price, and whatever they'll do is pull that order out and typically reverse the trade and take the short side of the trade because it's just going to fall under its own weight. Even if it's for 30 seconds or a minute, they make money on the spread in there by taking the opposite side of the trade. It's called spoof trading. It was made illegal in the early days of electronic trading because people did it. So now it's going on in the crypto world and all these exchanges because there's no regulation around it. I mean, it's not technically illegal. So, they can make all the trading that's on there completely fake and pretend like there's something. There's supposedly all this hundreds of millions of dollars of trading in volume. Well, look at the fucking blockchain that these trades are supposed to be happening on. It's not there. So it's just really just another derivative that's been created. And they manipulated that for one reason. Here's why. Because these guys wanted to be able to control all of crypto, be the one crypto to rule them all. Well, they couldn't take down Bitcoin. They needed to be bigger. So what they did was they engineered this whole thing to ramp up all of crypto and then have it crash back down right in time for them to launch EOS. EOS, that was supposed to be the world computer. They raised $4 billion in their year-long ICO, and it's like weird. Like, why are they spending a year raising $4 billion? And why do they need $4 billion? And where the fuck is $4 billion? Where did it go? $4 billion for an ICO for a company that had no fucking track record of anything that worked other than some fraud. So anyway, they engineered that. Really was as a pump and dump scheme. It's as old as this trading has been around. It's an old-fashioned pump and dump scheme to have everybody hate Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the other cryptos and go to the one savior that's ready there waiting, EOS. because EOS is the one that's supposed to solve it all. It's super fast. You know, they brag about how many transactions per second. They call it the Ferrari of all this shit. Sounds good. But okay, so here's an example. What if you had to have a top fuel dragster as your daily driver? Yeah, that thing's really fucking fast for a few hundred feet. And then what? The speed means nothing if the thing's not secure and they can change it at will. And there's a central governance that just has it's another government that's even smaller and more corrupt than the one we're already dealing with. So, that's what's happened is it failed for them. Thank God enough people have woken up and realized what's going on, and their central control of EOS has been a fucking disaster. Their launch was a disaster. The whole thing has been a shit show, and it's not going to recover. And anybody that's pro EOS here, I'm sorry, man, facts are facts, and you can believe in it all you want, but when you really want to look at this, here's how you know this is all bullshit. So this is a Bitcoin chart, but you only know that because I'm telling you it's a Bitcoin chart. But what if we go to Ethereum? What if we go to EOS? EOS is a little bit different because it doesn't have a long track record, but there's Litecoin. I mean, they all so highly correlated. There's no real trading going on. There's so much because the entire thing is manipulated. It's all to create a narrative of some sort, and they've lost control of it now. What you're starting to see is a fall back to real value. Well, during all of this time, we had things happen. Here's one. The widespread, this is a Reddit article about the widespread reliance on Infura, a potentially massive security hole. Well, yes, this is Infura. Infura is like a hosting company for Ethereum. So here's what you need to know is to run a full node on Ethereum is a bitch. I've tried it, and I'm a pretty technical guy. I'm a very technical guy. I've coded my own blockchains. In fact, let's just jump to that real quick for people that don't know anything about me. I went through this thing just to show something. This is on cryptoconsortium.org. I'll put the link here in this chat for those who are interested. Put it in the description too on YouTube. And all this is it says I'm a certified Bitcoin professional, and this is all logged on the blockchain. I took the test. You can see it here. I took it here in 2017, and I got another 8 months until it expires. So it's a 2-year thing, and I did that and this is my test results. You got to pay for it. It's like $100 or whatever. And you can see here's my score, 75, a 63 out of 75. So I didn't do great. I got an 84. I actually had to take it twice. I failed the first time. It's hard. The time test, it's online. It's all on blockchain. So it's hard. And they got a countdown timer next to each question. And it's very technical stuff. So anyway, I studied for this. You know, I don't need any kind of certifications. I don't have a job or anything, and I don't have to go work for anybody. And, you know, I work from home. You know, I'm self-employed for almost 30 years now. And, but I just wanted to have it just to show that I knew something. I don't know. Crypto is a weird space, but I went through and learned about this, and I originally started building. So you guys that don't know me, I'm also a longtime programmer. I've been a programmer my whole life, really, and a web programmer very deep for 20 years. And I've done projects with MTV and World Poker Tour and Dr. Phil and a lot of celebrities in Hollywood. And so I've seen behind the scenes of stuff. And I've also built some pretty advanced software for trading stock markets, index arbitrage stuff is into, weighted index arbitrage based on phases of the moon and all kinds of cool things. So I'm very familiar with all of this stuff. So as I'm digging into building a blockchain, I wanted to build my own blockchain and build a little application that's tied to doing some cool things on Ethereum, you know, tokens, making everything a token and have it tradable and have your own little personal token is a very intriguing idea. I think we'll all get there eventually in some way once we learn to trust each other again a little bit. But as I started digging into this, I found Infura. So Infura is, instead of having to host your own node and be a miner essentially of Ethereum, you know, it's kind of hard. And it's over a terabyte of data now to host a full node. And then whenever you are hosting it, I don't know if you guys have tried it, but if you can get it to sync, well, that's good luck getting that to sync, which a terabyte of data, it can take a week. And, you know, may not any sort of hang up in there. I've had tons of problems getting that to work. But when you do get it to work, then you got this computer that's running hard, heating up everything, and making the fans are screaming constantly, and it's using a lot of electricity. So it's a pain in the ass. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's not like it's not a joy to do it. It's cool to do it for a little bit of the novelty of it, you know, being part of this future. But it's no different than really the early days, like we talked about, you and I last night, Jason, about the early days whenever we used to host our own websites on our own servers in our office. And then we just sat right next to my desk. Yep. And that's usually how you did it back in the day. And it was cool and interesting for a while. But, you know, all you got to do is have one power hiccup or the internet goes down or like anything that all of a sudden all your stuff's down. You're like, oh, maybe this is not a good idea. Well, that's all that this is with being a Bitcoin miner or whatever, because miner's only good until it's all mined out. Then what? You know, there's only 21 million, and so they'll be mined out eventually. And then what do the miners do? Well, then you got people that are just a node to verify transactions to go through there. You know, all verifying against each other, which creates consensus. You know, it's all a grand idea until you let dipshits in there and get control of it. So what's happened is, you know, in order to run, say, a little game or whatever, what I was building was a little chat bot, or I built it actually. It was running on multi-chain. We'll talk about that a little bit. But built a little chat bot for our trainer method game, keeping track of the points of our accountability program. And it would, people put their points in with the chat bot, and then the chat bot would ping Infura, and Infura would then log the stuff on the Ethereum blockchain, right? Sounds great, okay? It makes you feel like you're doing blockchain stuff. It's decentralized, we're doing decentralized. Well, you're not at all. I mean, Infura is just another hosting company. They just got servers sitting around and they're hosting nodes, and then they're connecting to, those nodes are connecting to Ethereum. But here's the giant problem. What this article is bringing up, isn't the widespread reliance on Infura a massive potential security hole? Why is that a security hole? Because if you get consensus, a 51% consensus of the blockchain, you can take over and do whatever you want, including take everybody's money and reroute it into your own account. All of it. So once you've got control, you know, and consensus, complete control of the system, you can do that. And the widespread reliance on Infura is a massive problem because they run on Amazon servers. So what if Amazon all of a sudden one day said, shit, man, we've got enough of this computing power here. Why don't we just take over Ethereum? They could. I mean, they probably won't. It'd be a huge backlash, but at some point, it would make sense for them to do that. And that's the whole idea. It's not decentralized at all. It's very centralized in all kinds of ways. So it's just this illusion of centralization on all these things. It's a huge problem. So yes, it's a big problem because big things like CryptoKitties is what this is. You guys have heard of CryptoKitties, probably, if you're paying attention to the cryptocurrency space at all. Their website won't even load now. But CryptoKitties was a huge, well, still is an application that's big. It had a huge spike and run up and a whole lot of, here we go, it's finally loading. You can see it now. So these are the newest newborn CryptoKitties. Now these cats, really all they are is a unique place on the Ethereum blockchain. They tokenize it, and then they made a little, cartoon cat that's unique to each one. So everyone is unique, and it's mathematically provable unique by going and checking about it on the blockchain. Well, the cat is just a thing that they put on top of a hash of a number. It's all it is. But it's not decentralized at all. In fact, the generator that makes the uniqueness of the cat itself and the cartoon stuff where all these images are hosting are completely centralized. It's run on this company's servers. So if that company shuts down, they decide not to host your CryptoKitty anymore. Some people that paid $100,000 plus for some of these dumb things, guess what? All they got is a hash that's on the blockchain somewhere, and good luck finding it. It certainly isn't tied to any cat anymore. So there's all this illusion of centralization that's it's bullshit. Now I get it. It's stepping stones, but everybody calls it decentralized and pretending like it's something it's not. It's fucking bullshit. So whenever I started learning this stuff, I really started being like, man, what have I wasted my time on? Because I'd spent all this time going to this crypto school, and I was going to actually take the next level up, which is certified Bitcoin executive, I think. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a next level up, which is a lot more schooling and a lot more testing, just because, I wanted to know the next level of this stuff. And as I was building it, I'm getting competent in building my own. I launched several of my own cryptocurrencies, and I built on top of multi-chain, on top of graphene. I built on top of Waves and Stellar and a Bitcoin Core, obviously, and Ethereum. I still have stuff running on Ethereum, testnet, all kinds of things. And I felt like I was pretty proficient at it. Plus, I've got a really strong background in trading. I mean, I've been a veteran of trading since I was a teenager, and not teenager, early 20s, late teens, I guess early 20s. But since the early 90s, heavy into trading at a very high level, including running my own hedge fund. And working with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And I wrote shitloads of automated trading programs, got really good at that stuff. And seeing the inside of how all this works, learning how market making works, and seeing how, working on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange in the early days of when the E-mini S&P 500 started trading. I was there in the early days when there's only a few people in the back of the pit doing it. And I got to see the early electronically traded S&P 500 futures. And I saw all how this come up, including all of this shit that I've been talking about, spoof trading, wash trading, and automated bullshit and complete manipulation, the whole thing. And I saw this is just all the same shit in crypto, except worse because there's no regulation. So as I'm learning this and I'm going through this, I'm teaching all of you guys that are listening to my show and bought my products and have been involved in some of my programs. I've been teaching this stuff and saying, crypto's this and everything. And then I'm finding out about Tether. And then the fact that whenever CryptoKitties launched, one company launched a successful product on Ethereum and it shut the whole damn network down. That was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. It was one of them for me, for sure. They had a few thousand users, and it shut down all of Ethereum because the whole thing is not scalable. In fact, the more people that use it, the slower it gets. It's because the nature of the beast. It's kind of dumb. There are scaling solutions in the works, but Ethereum is broken. In fact, they're already working on Ethereum 2.0 because the first one doesn't work. And they've got the DAO hack that happened right out of the gate. They proved that it's centralized. And people don't actually believe in what they're trying to do. They're just all about money, because when the original DAO hack that happened a couple of years ago, DAO, $150 million was stolen or whatever, the entire community should have let that happen. The theft, and there should have been a lesson like, oh shit, that's a lesson. You learn from lessons. But instead, They did the too big to fail thing, just like they did in 2008 when the government and others bailed out the banks. That's what happened with the Dow attack. The Ethereum community, from their greed, didn't want to have the $150 million in the black eye. Instead, made two black eyes by forking the thing. And that's why you have Ethereum Classic now, and then you got what everybody calls Ethereum, which is a fake-ass fork of the original. So the current Ethereum is bullshit, and then plus it doesn't scale. I mean, there's all kinds of problems we can talk about. But back to Infura. So Infura is hosted on AWS, Amazon servers. It's a big problem. It's complete centralization. And that's what you find out is that most of a lot of Bitcoin, other than the miners, Bitcoin's its own little beast because you have to have such specialized heavy equipment to be a miner. But so it's gotten very centralized to server farms in China. There's some spread other places, but most of them in China. Very centralized, and it's places where people get access to free or cheap power that you just can't compete other places. So it's no different than a Google having a server farm that's just running it, and it's completely out of your control. So would you entrust all of your wealth to something that's just managed in China? It's no different than having a whole bunch of ownership of gold, but the gold is in the ground in China. What's the fucking difference? I mean, all they do is cut your access to it, and they got it. They got it. I mean, of course, there's all this, of course, there's security and all those kind of things, but shit, man, I don't want my entire world's wealth, our entire world's everything centralized in that way. I mean, that's the whole idea. It doesn't solve anything if there's no centralization solving. So what's the solution? The solution really for me is to go to gold-backed sound money. That's the entire problem that's happened with our system, and what everybody in the crypto world claims to want to get away from is fiat currency. Fiat basically means fake. It doesn't mean fake, but it's just a better way of putting it. When I hear fiat, I hear fake. But fiat means just created from nothing. That's what it means. Well, how the fuck is Bitcoin any different? Created from nothing. Oh yeah, but they burned electricity, but okay. How's that any different than electricity that's burned on the computers at the Federal Reserve to hit a button to create US dollars? No fucking different. Come on, man. I mean, so they burn a little bit more electricity. Anyway, fiat means created from nothing. And so we've had this inflation of our money since 1913 when the Federal Reserve came in place. And I'm not going to go through all that. You guys should know all that. If you don't, go research it on YouTube. The Federal Reserve is not federal, and they don't have any reserves. It's no more federal than Federal Express. It's not a government entity. It had no government has control of it. The president can only appoint some of the governors, but doesn't have any say in what they do. It's a completely private member bank that manages our money, and they get paid to do so. Both the Treasury has to pay them to print the money that they sell back to us, and then they charge interest on top of that for nothing. What do they give to us? Fucking nothing. They give oversight. So it's our little god that we created that nobody wants to talk about. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Everybody just ignores all the fucking time, that this entity that has no control of anybody in our fucking government has control of them. They do whatever they want, and they manage all our money. Sounds federal. They're not federal at all. It's a privately owned bank by some say 15 families, and none of them, I think only 5 of them, are United States. It's complete control of our currency. They're created in 1913. So they're not federal, and they have no reserves, meaning our money was supposed to be, like all money should be, backed by something real. It was backed by gold, but since it came in stages, but since 1933, whenever the United States government declared bankruptcy, and you can see that in HJR 192 on June 5th, 1933. It was in They actually put it on the New York Times, seizing the gold. They seized the gold and made gold ownership illegal. The United States government ordered its private citizens to turn over their privately held gold. Imagine just waking up tomorrow and saying, well, home ownership is illegal. You got to turn over your house to government. Sorry. That's what they did. June 5th, 1933. House Joint Resolution 192. They basically said, not basically, they said gold ownership is illegal, and they seized it. They ordered every citizen to turn over their gold to the fucking banks. It was a robbery with no guns. And they did it because of a crisis, because we're going through the Great Depression at the time, fabricated crisis that purposely caused the crash of 1929, and then caused further, just very similar to what happened in 2008. And it's all enrichment of the central banker, the people, the elites that have control of this shit. They bail themselves out and then stick everybody else with the bill, and we just go along with it and say, okay, well, we'll just give over our gold. Even when we're going through the Great Depression, we're all broke anyway. Might as well just give over our gold too. Nobody even argued with it. What the fuck? Makes no sense. But that shows how manipulated we are as a society by media and, government. But regardless, that's what happened. So since then, we haven't had gold-backed money. It turned into just paper money. And in 1972, or was it 1971, whenever Nixon took us off of the gold standard and let all our currencies float freely in the marketplace. Now it's all just paper. It's all bullshit, easily manipulative. Exactly like what's going on in the crypto space in these exchanges with things like Tether and all these fake ass coins. Call it a coin, call it a token, call it a tether, whatever. It's no different than the derivatives contracts and all of these different derivatives on top of derivatives. So now you've got currencies that float against each other, but then you've got that trade against currency pairs, but then you've got currency futures, you got currency options, you got futures on options. No shit. So these are all derivatives on top of derivatives, and this created this massive bubble. So through this, the Federal Reserve, which has no reserves, which we'll talk about in a second, has no gold anymore because it's all been stolen. We'll talk about that in a second. They created this reserve lending process where they can, the member banks can loan out to, I think it's 39 times what their underlying assets are. But guess what? The assets can't even be assets. They have to be debt. It has to be debt on top of debt, because guess what? A bank cannot lend its own assets. It's illegal according to Federal Reserve Charter. Member banks cannot loan their own assets. And member banks cannot loan the assets of its account holders. So when a bank gives a loan, where the fuck is the money coming from? It's not coming from their assets. It's not coming from any of the shareholder or the account holders. Those are part of the Federal Reserve Charter. Look it up. So whose money are they lending then? Well, nobody's. You know why? Because the money is created out of thin air as soon as you sign the fucking contract. Your signature creates the money on whatever it is. If it's a mortgage, it's a credit card bill or a credit card account, whatever it is, whatever creates the money. Is it some kind of loan, a car loan, a signature loan of any kind? Your signature creates the money, because they take that, they go take it, stamp it on the back, they put it as an asset into their bank account. It goes in as a credit, and then that credit goes to Federal Reserve window, and it turns into more part of our currency. So what's it eventually ends up being our dollars. So what we've got is the US dollar is what they call fungible. It's a fungible version of all of our debt mixed together. So when we're trading US dollars back and forth, or any other world currency, they're all the same. I'm just using US dollars as an example. But you're trading US dollar around. All you're trading is little slips of everybody else's debt. It's like you're trading somebody else's student loan or your little piece of somebody else's credit card. Like you might be buying lunch. It feels like you're buying lunch, but all you're doing is trading a piece of somebody else's debt somewhere. And because of that, you got this debt expansion where you got all these derivatives contracts that constantly build on top of each other, creating debt on top of debt on top of debt on top of debt, creating money out of thin air, and all of these things. You've got a giant system where the whole thing is built on debt. It's all thin air. There's nothing backing it. There's nothing real. And it's a bad problem. So what do you do with this? The second bullet point I got. So there's a lot of talk about it. Debt jubilee sounds great. There's a lot of talk about debt jubilee and people that are paying attention to this stuff. Debt jubilee meaning, and Jason, you can talk a little bit about jubilee because it's a very biblical thing.
Yep.
I'm going to explain what I've been hearing about it and my research into it, and have you talk about the biblical side of it. So debt jubilee. Actually, Jason, why don't you just explain what it is from a biblical standpoint, and then I'll explain where it is politically now.
So, this is something that was written, obviously long ago. And there's this idea that every certain number of years, your debts would be forgiven. And it was a way to kind of like give power to the people. Ultimately, if they got behind or got in a situation where they had to sell themselves into slavery or go into debt, as we would call it today, it was a time where that didn't last for eternity, didn't last forever. And so it's a really, really interesting idea in the sense that, because people were being set free financially, it was obviously a Jubilee year was declared, and it was a time of celebration. You got your life back. Everything was kind of reset. And so it was, it's something that obviously from a biblical perspective, it was a positive thing. But I think, we're talking about it now and we've never considered it. We've never run our system based on it. Now all of a sudden we're talking about debt jubilee, which sounds exciting, especially to the younger generation who are, getting out of college with record amounts of student loan debt, record amounts of credit card debt. This is a generation it's actually so much poorer than the previous generation, which is, severe breakdown in our system. But, now there's a big push, certainly by the millennial generation and others to have a debt jubilee. The problem with that debt jubilee that I'm seeing, again, I'm just, just from my own research, is who's going to pay for it? And obviously, people that have saved all their lives, have made wise financial choices, whatever, your money is going to be pretty much worthless, I would think, or they're going to tap into that or just printing more money, as a solution. And you can talk more about that. But the idea of a jubilee in the Bible is, again, it's a very freeing thing. And obviously, if a jubilee's coming up, I think you handle things differently. But for us to go into a debt jubilee right now, when that's not how we've operated, and all of a sudden the financial landscape changes dramatically, I think it's definitely a quite negative thing in today's world.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about the debt jubilee. That whenever it was a regular thing, I think it was 50 years. Every 50 years, you have a debt jubilee. So everybody knew it was coming. So you'd have, you might have a ramp up for even 40 years, but at 40 years, you're like, oh shit, this is going to be wiped out in 10 years. So we got to figure out how to solve it. So it's a self-correcting thing where now, like, we have so much debt and nobody's ready for it. Like you said, it's got to be a very negative thing. So I don't think there's going to be a debt jubilee, because who's going to pay for it? Like you said, the banks aren't going to fucking pay for it. They're not going to let themselves go down for it, just like they did. They're going to try to bail themselves out with this. What they're trying to do now, they're trying to do everything under the sun to keep the status quo going, so the shit doesn't collapse on their head. But You guys should pay attention to what's going on with Deutsche Bank right now. Deutsche Bank is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, debt holders in the world, derivatives holders. I mean, derivatives creators, holders. They're about to fail. That system fails, and this whole thing's done. I mean, it's all going to come crashing down. So a debt jubilee, even if you gave me the power right now to like wave a wand and do a debt jubilee, it's not going to solve anything. I mean, it will solve some immediate things and we'll all feel great, but that debt is what's keeping things alive. It's like, I can't think, I don't know enough about medical things, but you know, there's situations where, you know, it's better to give somebody some sort of poison. Like I'm thinking like in a Western medicine kind of sense. I don't believe this at all, but in Western medicine, they believe in order to cure you of cancer, they inject you with some sort of poison, chemotherapy, or radiate you in order to, you know, yeah, you're going to lose some bad or some good cells, but yeah, you're going to get saved from cancer. That's kind of the idea here. Like, you're going to just give some people a benefit to you know, get their debt taken care of, but then the entire system's full of fucking cancer. You gotta have to kill the patient, you know? So a debt jubilee doesn't work. So what the way that they can do that, what I mean they is the central bankers, the people that actually control this shit, can do it through oil prices. So I've talked about oil prices a lot, but in the third bullet point here, oil prices, what they can do is make oil really, really cheap, you know, and then that fuels a lot of things in the economy. So what you can see is a big push to make oil cheap, so that drives commerce in lots of ways, and it creates a lot of geopolitical problems, but it puts a lot of stress on the bank if it gets too cheap. So that's what's happening right now. In oil that's down below 50 on WTI crude is a giant problem. That's why you're seeing a huge issue with oil right now. But what they've been able to do, you can't lower oil prices anymore. That's typically how they would do a stealth jubilee. So if oil was $200 a barrel and gas is, you know, $5, $6, $7, $8 a gallon or whatever in the United States, a way you can give a jubilee to people is by lowering gas prices, right? Drop it dramatically down to 100, then it's half or whatever, you know. And that's happened. We've had a stealth jubilee of sorts. You guys probably didn't even notice it, but gas is a shitload cheaper than it has been in a very long time. And that's a little bit of a intentional and unintentional debt jubilee, because it makes everything that you're doing, all our transport costs, traveling in flights, and of course driving in your car, it makes everything cheaper. So what you get is more money in your pocket. But they can't do that anymore because oil too cheap starts causing all kinds of problems. Just, you know, we get OPEC's pissed off. So then we start moving into the geopolitics of this thing, because when you really get down to it, oil is what drives the price of everything anymore. Everything. It's the crux of everything. So the big problem in the world right now is that for the last, since the early 70s, since they put in OPEC, the world has been dominated by the petrodollar. And the United States dollar, who we've talked about, has been inflated to death because there's no gold backing it anymore. In order to keep it alive, in order to keep the whole sham going, the world was forced to trade its oil through OPEC, using only United States dollars. So that's what's created what's called a petrodollar. Petrodollar doesn't even really exist. It's really oil contracts. Yeah, the oil contracts are then denominated in U.S. dollars. There is no such thing as actual petrodollar. It's just a catchphrase. But what's happened now is that now the world is sick of buying U.S. debt. Nobody wants it anymore because it's all going to collapse upon itself. And there's no more value left to be wrung out of the system. Now China, which is the biggest holder, Japan, huge holder, they're moving out of it. And now China specifically is doing oil contracts to buy oil through Iran and other places using contracts denominated in non-dollar. So the petro, right now you got the petro yuan contracts are traded, and there's hundreds of billions of dollars that have been traded. And now this is outside of OPEC, outside of the U.S. dollar. China, which is one of the biggest buyers of oil in the world, now buying in contracts not denominated in the U.S. dollar. That's basically the death knell of the U.S. dollar, because the only thing that's holding up the dollar and all of this fake money, debt inflated bullshit is the fact that everybody in the world is forced to trade their oil in that currency. That's it. Once they don't have to do that, why would you want U.S. dollars anymore? It's everybody's debt. Like I said, it's everybody's credit card debt. It's everybody's student loans. Why would you want to hold that shit? Why do you want to hold everybody's debt?
Isn't the petro, however you say it, yuan or whatever, isn't that backed by gold? Or is that something they're looking at doing?
Eventually, it will be. The entire world systems now are all fiat based, but we'll talk about that in a second, because crypto ruble on the same bullet point here, right here. The next move that it's already tested. It's already been ready to go for over a year. It's ready to go. They did huge tests with it. It's fast. It worked very well. Russia has their own blockchain-based ruble, the crypto ruble. It's their own cryptocurrency, ready to fucking rock. And they haven't released it yet for all kinds of reasons, but number one, it works. There's going to be a huge race to the exit, and who can get out of the U.S. dollar or any other huge debt-laden instrument as fast as fuck. It's going to crash the system. So what's happening is they're starting to rev these things up and do anything they can do to not trade, not be holding U.S. dollar anymore. Meanwhile, these central banks are sucking up gold like crazy. Physical gold bars. So the push is to go to gold-backed sound money or asset-backed sound money. Could be, in Russia's case, with thinking that the crypto ruble might actually be backed by oil. That's the kind of direction they're going. Where in Mexico is the world's largest producer of silver. So the intention would be for Mexico, and this is what I'm hearing that what they're doing too, is Mexico going to silver standard. I get a lot of information from a lot of places, but I learn a lot from Jim Willie. You guys should listen to him. goldenjackass.com. The guy's awesome. He's got a YouTube channel. I'll put his link below in the description of this video too. But gold-backed sound money, it sounds great. Why don't we just go back to gold standard and solve all this? Well, you can't. You couldn't just do that, because it's like a jet jubilee. It won't work. We're way too deep into lots of problems. And so there's three problems here, and this came from Jim Willie again. But he talks about how there's three problems. The reason we can't go back to gold, we can't, even if you could wave a wand right now and go back to gold-backed sound money right now, it wouldn't work. Because there's number one, there's three problems. There's no gold in Fort Knox. Not only is no gold in Fort Knox, there's not enough to cover enough of our money right now, our money supply and all the shit that's out there to even cover what we've got, to even come close to having gold-backed sound money. Even if there was gold in Fort Knox, but there's no gold in Fort Knox because you know what happened to it? You saw Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, or whatever the fuck his title's name is. They showed him on a tour of Fort Knox, and he held up, there's pictures all over media. He held up a gold bar. He's got gloves on, and the whole thing. It's bullshit. It's a tungsten bar that's gold plated. It's pretty well documented that the Bushes and Clinton, Bush Sr. and Clinton, stole the gold out of Fort Knox and had it re-minted as tungsten and gold plated it. Meanwhile, they shipped it all over to other places. Over 8,000 tons of gold. It's not there anymore. And you're not going to see any audit or any proof of that anytime soon, but it's pretty well documented. Those guys stole it. So there's no gold. So first of all, you'd have to replace the gold that's missing. But there is some evidence out there now with the latest stuff that's going on with the executive order that Trump did on December 21st, 2017, where he's supposedly, from the scuttlebutt, that they potentially might have recovered that gold, which is huge, but you know, who knows? That's what I've heard from a few different sources. They've actually re-seized the gold that the Bushes stole, and that's why they're kind of going out of power now, and they don't have their funding, and we're about to have a reboot of our financial system. But regardless, there's no gold in Fort Knox, and so we don't have any gold to do gold-backed sound money. So what are we going to do? Where are we going to get the money for it? Like, nobody's going to give it to us, you know? We're going to get it. It's just a huge problem. Number two, even if you solve that problem somehow magically by getting the gold that Bush, you know, and QAnon or whoever else we want to talk about, the good guys, we'll just call them the good guys, if they've been able to seize that gold and put it back, you know, how does that appear back in the books? I think I know how. I'll talk about it in a second. But even if you solve that problem, number two, our $600 billion current trade deficit. So think about this. Trade deficit means money is leaving the country. So if you've got, even if you got gold-backed sound money and you put all this gold in a big vault, Fort Knox and other places, and then you've got a trade deficit. Gold is leaving the country effectively. When trade is leaving, that's money. If you got gold-backed sound money, gold is leaving the country. So you got $600 billion a year of trade deficit. That's what I think around 11,000 ounces. I think Jim Willie said. I think 11,000 tons. Sorry, 11,000 tons of gold leaving every year. Well, guess what? The gold that was supposed to be in Fort Knox was only 8,000 tons. So you got that much and more leaving every year in the term of trade deficit. So if you got gold-backed sound money, you're effectively and realistically, literally shipping all of your gold out every year. And then what? Then you starting next year with no gold again. Understand, this is why the trade deficit is a big problem. This is why Bitcoin doesn't solve shit. That's why I have this right at the top. What does Bitcoin solve? Digital gold. Okay, well, guess what? If you're still doing trade and you want the world to work how it does right now, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Congratulations, it's a limited supply. But we've got a trade deficit. If you're still buying shit in this country more than you produce here, all of that Bitcoin eventually is going to be elsewhere. All of it. There's a limited supply, and if all of our money magically overnight was Bitcoin, $600 billion worth of that, whatever that works out to be in Bitcoin at the time, is leaving to somebody else. And that runs out really fucking fast at that rate. So gold-backed sound money doesn't solve it. Bitcoin doesn't fucking solve it, even if you want the Bitcoin to be everything that it's supposed to be. That trade deficit is a giant problem. And it's why Trump is making such a big deal about it. People just, I don't think he's doing it right, but well, I don't know, because I've heard also that he's doing this on purpose, these trade tariffs on purpose to accelerate the failure of this system, this financial system, because they could drag this shit off and off for 20 fucking years and just drag us through more debt and hell when we really need to rip the fucking Band-Aid off and let this thing fail so something new can come in and replace it. But even if you got something new that's like everybody wants, if you got this trade deficit, it's a problem. It doesn't solve it at all. It makes you feel good while you've got a little bit of gold sitting around, but a couple years later, shit's gone. And you're like, oh shit, what are we going to do for next year? What are we going to pay for our $600 billion of the shit we're buying next year? And that leads to the number three problem, is that we don't make things anymore. We've lost skill sets. My brother and I were talking about this the other day, where now the push for everybody is to go to college, go to university, get a degree. Whenever I mean, it was kind of the tail end, like whenever I was kind of going through school, where they teach you somewhat to either go to college or go to trade school. You know, I actually went to trade school. I went to a couple of them. I went to, in Neosho, went to auto body school, the Neosho Vocational Technical School, to auto body. And in high school, in Carthage, Missouri, I went to a couple. I went to the electronics class, and that's where I first started learning electronics. And then I took, this is in high school, took machine shop. That's when I got my eyes open. Machine shop was in high school. They don't teach that shit in high schools anymore. They don't have like vocational technical schools. Tell everybody to go to college and get some worthless fucking degree. And so a lot of these skill sets, because of NAFTA and just our laziness, skill sets in manufacturing just don't exist in the United States the way they used to. So we don't make things, we buy things. I mean, Apple, one of the biggest company in the world, Apple, is the US company. Where does all the money go? Fucking China, because they make it in China. Why is it not made in the United States with pride? Of course, it's more expensive, but why aren't we have the skills and the abilities? What, is China all of a sudden smarter than we are? So anyway, there's a big problem with the trade deficit being solved. We can't solve a trade deficit without having skill sets here where we make stuff that the rest of the world wants now. Become a producing nation instead of a consuming nation. So all of that made me very negative for blockchain and crypto stuff because I didn't see it as solving anything. I was like, well, it's digital money. Well, guess what? All money's fucking digital now. It has been for a long time. I mean, yeah, we play around, pretend like we got cash and stuff, but I mean, mostly, how often do you use cash? Not very often. Unless you're hanging around the bar or casino, you don't really need cash anymore. You just don't. So piecing all this stuff together, I got really negative on crypto and really life, really, because I don't see a way out for this, because there's debt jubilee doesn't solve things. Even going straight to gold backed sound money doesn't solve anything. For me, the only solution I see is having some sort of cryptocurrency that has that, you know, the security and the immutability and that place of trust that you can go to as a database, coupled with asset backing, gold, oil, silver, commodity, whatever it is, something that's real world that can actually connect to it. Sort of like I think of it as an insurance on top of insurance. So Bitcoin is like the electronic insurance contract that would secure the gold that's being held. And then the gold is a solid real version of the electronic contract of Bitcoin, for example. So they both insure each other. It's like a double insurance contract of what's backing it. I think that's where we got to be, and I think that's the only way we're going to be out of it. So back to Jet Jubilee. Here's what I believe is going to happen, and I'm getting this from Jim Willie and a lot of other people who have been looking at this for a long time, is that the way that the debt jubilee is going to happen is massive increase in gold prices, because the banks can get well positioned in holding real gold. That's why they're pushing to own real gold, not paper gold. Not gold stocks, not gold mining stocks, not gold futures contracts, not gold options. Physical shit you can hold in your hand, gold. So what they'll do is the banks are getting well positioned, basically acquiring all the gold they can get their hands on. I'm very, very, very connected in the gold world with massive volumes of gold. And I can tell you, it is moving like crazy. All kinds of stats you can see is online. It's not a secret thing or anything. You can see central banks are acquiring gold like crazy. At least European and Eastern ones are. The United States, who knows, because they don't tell but the truth. But Russia, China, India, all on massive sprint to acquire gold. So they can get well positioned. And then here's how the debt jubilee happens, because there's a debt jubilee is going to happen, because either the debt's going to have to be jubilee, written off, or it's going to collapse the entire system and it's going to be written off anyway, because it's impossible to repay. So it has to be a debt jubilee of some sort. So the guys that manage the system, that run the system, the central bankers, can manipulate this in their own way by creating a debt jubilee, get themselves well positioned with gold, and then letting gold prices finally go free, let free real price discovery happen in the gold markets, and then gold will go 10x, 20x, 30x very, very quickly. And I don't mean like overnight or anything, but over the course of years, we're talking. I mean, 10x where it is right now is the lowest number I've heard anybody that's actually looked at the numbers and where this thing should be. That's the lowest. I've seen up to 50 and 100x where gold is right now. That's the debt jubilee. You get the people ability to have gold, have something of real have value, spike through the roof. And I also believe, not coincidentally at all, that Bitcoin is going to do the same thing. But with Bitcoin, you're going to have to see more of what we're seeing right now, which is the massive move down. I think it's got more to go. I think we got to get down to what Cliff High released a report the other day. He projected 1250 for a low, and that's 1250 back down to where it passed up gold in terms of 1 Bitcoin versus an ounce of gold. I think it's got to be down there at least. I projected 500 on Bitcoin back in December of 2017. That's where my chart said it's got to fill a gap. So somewhere between 500 and 1200 on Bitcoin, I think, is where it's got to get to before really we start to see all the washout of all the shit, and which you start seeing the real tech emerge. So that's what's happened here is we've had this article here, and I'll give you guys this link. I posted in Slack. This article here really got my eyes open and really got me excited about this stuff again for the longest since, what's the word I'm looking for? For months, really. Because I've been really bummed out, man. Like thinking the world sucked. Because like crypto to me was an answer. You know, it was a way for anybody anonymously or pseudonymously to be able to go launch a business, to not have to deal with merchant accounts, to not have to worry about eventually with advertising accounts, not having to have a third-party advertiser shut you off, like Facebook shut off your ads when you're just trying to make a little bit of money and run a legit business, or shut off your merchant accounts, because merchant accounts don't like information products. I see crypto is a way to, for an honest person, I'm not trying to steal any money or anything, just trying to go create something new that's innovative and try something people haven't thought of that's outside the box, that doesn't fit into the box of what a fucking merchant account think you're supposed to do, or what you're having a different opinion compared to what your web host does. So they don't shut off your hosting, which is happening now, or having your social media accounts terminated or your YouTube accounts terminated because they didn't like something you said in the video or something. That's been the pull for me, to have a way to be able to go create what I want, have freedom of creation, and build a business that can be automated and run on the internet electronically without having some asshole third party tell me what I can and can't do. So as I've started figuring out all these problems with the existing way that crypto is, it really bummed me out, because I had thought that this is a big thing and I had preached about it. I built a lot of technology around it. Thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours at this point, building stuff around all this, launching cryptocurrencies, writing white papers. I've been involved in a bunch of ICOs that did really well. And then finding all this stuff is really kind of a knife to my heart, And through it all, I really had kind of lost hope in everything and around this stuff, and our current financial system, our current political system, all of it. And I finally just said, you know what, fuck it. I'll just sit back. Something's got to break eventually. So 2 things I mentioned last night finally broke that opened my eyes. And it was 2 things I was looking for. I didn't really realize I was looking for it. But the 2 things were, 1, people had to open up their eyes to what's going on with social media. Losing faith in the data that's being used on social media and sold. Your data, how it's used and sold. So all the stuff that you do on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, is sold to somebody, because that forms a fingerprint of somebody that buys a certain set of products. So then that data is sold, and then you get displayed ads back to you. And so you got to realize if there's no product to buy, then you're the product. There's no product to buy on Facebook when you log in. You don't have to pay to be part of it. You're not paying their hosting bill. You're not paying for any of that stuff. You're not paying for any of their staff. You pay nothing. It's free. Why is it free? Because you are the product. You're being sold. All your data, all your value that's being put into that is sold and leaked all over the fucking place. And before people really wake up to that fact and get pissed off enough about it and start doing something about it, I'm just like, whatever, fuck it all, you know? Because if people just want to let that happen to their value, then that's fine, because it's not just your data, it's your value. It's your creative energy that's going into these social media that's creating the community. It's what creates the social aspect. It's what creates the community and the feeling of there's sort of friends there, connections at least. It's because there's other people that are putting their value into that. We vacuum out what we feel like we get from it, and we put our own in there. Meanwhile, these vampire companies in Silicon Valley are just sucking that value out for themselves and enriching themselves to hundreds of billions of dollars. And people don't realize it. I mean, we're literally batteries for the matrix. Our energy is feeding these fuckers. And they don't care. You want to try to run ads on their system, even though they're stealing all the energy and the data from people, the creative aspect of everyone, and they're selling it, and you want to buy some of it? Nope, you got to abide by their rules. It's just fucked up. It's backwards. It's different than the way the world should be working. And I've been very frustrated by it for a long time, because as I constantly try to push the envelope, you know, think of just like even 15 years ago, Google AdWords comes out. It's revolutionary, a way to run, you know, self-serving ads. You know, you didn't have to go through an ad network anymore, or a rep, or do all these crazy contracts. You could just sign in, create a little ad, and launch it. You could have money coming in 15 minutes. It was amazing, beautiful. So back then it was easy. You could do whatever the hell you wanted. We'd just upload spreadsheets of keywords and try all kinds of interesting things. We made all kinds of money, lightning fast. And that was cool and all, until they didn't like it anymore. Then we had multi-million-dollar business just shut off overnight, terminated accounts. And Google got so good at all the cloak and dagger shit, it got very hard to even open a new account. Had to create all kinds of James Bond type shit just to be able to go open up new accounts. It's crazy. Just to be able to run ads on these things that they're just, especially Google. Think about Google. What value does Google provide? The ability to find shit? Okay, that's cool. But what is it that they're finding? They're going to scraping your website without your permission, scrape it, and then go cache that content on their indexing engine. And then when somebody goes to do a search that relates to that, they serve it to those people and then put ads all around your content and monetize it. And they don't give you any of it. You get to be on the first page of Google. There you go. Good job. Thanks for feeding the beasts. That's what you get paid for being on that. It's a shadow game, man, or it's a magician's trick. No, shadow game. It's a magician's trick. Look over here. You get almost no value or some value. Meanwhile, now Google's the biggest, most powerful company in the world. Anyway, all of that has painted me into a place where I'm just got sick of all this. And then I got censored on a decentralized blockchain-based platform. I got censored the very first time I ever posted on the fucking thing because they didn't like my idea. That really soured my opinion of this whole space. And then finding out all these things about the manipulation and looking at the exchanges and how full of shit they are. And then actually trying to build on top of all of this with building my own, because I built apps. I built a chat bot, an app that was, you know, on our own custom cryptocurrencies. I built hundreds of them on top of Ethereum. And I even used Infura. Realizing this shit is slow and it doesn't work. I might as well be using Firebase, which is Google's tool, a completely centralized database. But guess what? It's fast and it works and it's not going to get hacked. So I was in a really dark place with all this stuff. I didn't want to really even talk about it too much. I was enjoying that the shit was going to zero, because I'm thinking, number one, people had to open up their eyes to how these Silicon Valley companies, not just social media, but Google, YouTube, all these companies sucking our value, all our creative energy out, and either giving us back pennies in the case of like YouTube, you monetize your ads, or nothing in the case of Facebook. They make billions of dollars off the back of us, and what do you get? Nothing. You get nothing for that. So that's going to change in the future. Well, we'll talk about this a little bit, but social networks where you have to pay to post, and people will pay to post even if it's 10 cents. But then if you want to find out more, read the rest of it, you pay another penny or 10 cents or $1. And that goes right to the producer. And then the social media or social network itself gets nothing other than maybe a tiny little percentage just for hosting the website. That's where it's headed. I mean, and we'll all have versions of that. Things like your car, you won't pay for insurance until the thing is rolling, and it'll all be based on blockchain tied to, Internet of Things thing in your dashboard, checking off whether your car is moving or not. And then, of course, log to blockchain, and then you get charged by the minute from your insurance company via some sort of Bitcoin or tokenized version of it built on the back of Bitcoin. So anyway, back to what opened my eyes to really get me positive again, because I am very positive now for crypto. Even though there is still a lot of problems to solve, and there's still that. So the two things I talked about was people waking up to what's going on with social media. And that's starting to happen now. People are aware of data breaches are a bad thing. These CEOs of the companies, Mark Zuckerberg and others, having to go and testify before Congress. It's happening. And people are really having a backlash against these companies. And then censorship is happening. People's accounts terminated, shadow banned. I've been censored. I've been put in Facebook jail so many times where they make me sit out for a week or 3 days or 12 hours or 20. It's stupid because they don't like some meme I post. I never post anything offensive. It's just funny. They don't have a fucking sense of humor. Stupid. So it happening all over the place. People with giant accounts getting their YouTube accounts shut off. I've had hundreds of YouTube accounts terminated. Then the reason I've had hundreds of accounts terminated, because they forced me into a spot where I had to build tools to go create hundreds of accounts in an automated fashion, because they won't let me run a fucking channel the way I want to. I'm not trying to do fraud or do anything crazy. I'm just trying to push the envelope and do stuff interesting. Anyway, I've experienced this so much that I just finally said, fuck it all. So people find out about that. And then number two, the second thing, finally getting to that, is that I needed to see crypto break down. I needed to see this. It all go to fucking zero and everybody start waking up. We're not there yet. So we've still got a long ways to go with it. But what we're starting to see is now the space coming back to reality. All the manipulation, this pump that's happening in the marketplace is getting bled out. So you're starting to see exchanges, these shitty exchanges going down and going out of business, and the hucksters that have taken advantage of this space are starting to crack and having to fire people and all this stuff. It's what we need. We need this whole thing flushed out to get back to real. Well, through this all, we saw the fork of Bitcoin. There was just one Bitcoin, and it forked last year over to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, with the BTC being for the ticker for on all the exchanges for Bitcoin, and BCH, Bitcoin Cash, was the split for the other one. No, the idea there was to go back to the model that was intended by Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous genius who wrote the white paper that coined Bitcoin. Well, as I said earlier, Bitcoin had been taken over by miners and centralized and all these things, and had kept the block sizes very small. So the blocks inside the blockchain all have transactions inside of them, and they're all limited in size. It's done for lots of reasons, but the main, what we'd call Bitcoin, the ones that had taken control of it had decided that they wanted to keep the block sizes small, 1 megabyte. And so the only a few transactions could get inside of that. You can only hold so many in the block, and then you got to create a new block. Well, when you got to create a new block, that means you need more mining going on, right? So, and smaller number of transactions, it's a supply and demand thing, meaning the space inside that block for that data, which is written to permanently, if you remember, becomes more expensive. So it became a battle between two camps. One camp that wanted to have more centralized the way it is now with small blocks and higher fees, with the other camp that wanted it to be more like what Satoshi had envisioned of being giant blocks and blocks that could expand huge size, so more transactions and much lower fees, but much higher volume, to be able to send money where it only costs maybe a penny or less to send Bitcoin, for instance. That's the idea. So it can turn into currency for everything, not just a really expensive thing that's kind of expensive to trade back and forth, and you got to go to exchange, it's a pain in the ass, and all these things. No, it's meant to be something else. So those two camps fought enough to where they forked. So one forked into Bitcoin, and it really just meant they took the code base that was, one went the way that it was, and another went another way, and put it back to what Satoshi had envisioned. And they called it Bitcoin Cash, which would it enabled lots of things. Two, it's able to be scalable, enables it to be have things like tokenization, so you can have things like tokens like you want on Ethereum, and be able to tokenize your own business, so you can create your own tokens, but still being backed by Bitcoin. And then it allows things like atomic swaps. So atomic swaps are the ability to exchange from one cryptocurrency to another. So from one token to another token, and have it be on one blockchain without having to go through a exchange. This is straight peer-to-peer. So that's the other problem with all of this stuff, is now it's turned into just another version of the existing digital trading and futures world that we have right now. They just called it something else, and it's all centralized in these exchanges and these miners and things, where it's supposed to be peer-to-peer, completely decentralized. Whenever you and I do an exchange for Bitcoin, it just goes between us. There is nobody in the middle. There's no exchange. There's no anything else in there. So that's all got to be unwound now. We've still got a lot of thinking. We're not used to thinking this way. We're used to giving up centralized control in some fashion, which we always will. There's always some sort of centralization factor to everything. In fact, I think the term decentralization has got completely overused, and it's a terrible term, but we're going to be stuck with it. But there's nothing that's decentralized. Nothing. I mean, at a minimum, everything still has to have power, and so the power company has all the control. They shut off the power to all this stuff. We're all fucked. So who has the power? The power whoever has control of the electrical grid is, I mean, that's all centralized at a minimum there. And then you've got who controls IP addresses, who controls data centers, who controls the trunk lines that feeds all this internet connections together. There's a whole lot of centralization aspects here. So let's not kid ourselves. None of this shit's decentralized in any fashion. But we can start moving towards it in a much better way by moving to where Internet 2.0 would be a thing, where technologies like WebAssembly, which allows your browser to run full-blown software without having to install any software, things like that. And that's where we're headed, where the browser will be able to run an instance of Bitcoin right in that second to be able to perform whatever transactions you're trying to do on a website, and then shuts it down. So it's sorely needed in the Bitcoin space, is a way to do microservices like that. So with Bitcoin Cash, it allows atomic swaps, tokenization, and smart contracts, just like Ethereum does, and much better scalability, while still having proof of work function as it's meant to secure the whole thing. We have the ability to do microservices. And so when I read this article, this guy really opened up my eyes. I didn't know about what he had been doing. And I'll show you what he's doing here in a second, but this is what he's got: BitSocket and BitDB. Actually, let's go back to BitDB is bitdb.network. Yeah. So I read this article. I'm going to go through the relevant points. You guys can read the whole thing yourself later, but it's really brilliant. And the most thing, like in the beginning here, he talks about the recent fork that happened. So Bitcoin forked away from what became Bitcoin Cash, and then Bitcoin Cash has enabled all of these, kept all of these things, and expanded upon all these things that I'm talking about. What enables the ability to us to do all these fantastical things that we talk about with what crypto can do, but keep it all on Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin maximalist idea, Bitcoin everything. So one crypto to rule them all. And I've been very against that because it just doesn't happen, you know? Like we don't have, even though the US dollar hegemony is huge and powerful, even the US dollar is not one currency to use and rule them all around the world. Just on forex exchanges, look at all the different kind of currencies that float and trade. So there's not even one real currency, but I think what we're missing here is that everybody went to the money aspect right away. Like jump on the fact that there's a currency, jumped on the fact that it's got a price that's going up and that you can make money from the speculation of it going up. So everybody jumped onto that when really all we wanted, we're all greedy. I mean, we just all wanted more money. You know, nobody actually gave a shit about what's really going on there. When it's really, what's really going on there is not the money. What it is, it's a new fucking internet. Nobody's going and worrying about, how can I relate this? So, what I'm getting to is what I see coming forward is what a lot of people believe is that the Internet 2.0 will be a side chain of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is just a database essentially that has all truth. So you can always go there and know that whatever you find there is true. So beside that, you just run a side chain that's where all you got your videos, your images, and whatever files you need to run that would be called the internet. But then those things are always checked against Bitcoin database to assure that they haven't been copied, that it's a real thing, that, you know, you're listening to a track and you've only listened to it this number of times, and so you got to pay. This is where microservices start to be a thing. So instead of buying a song, you can listen to it for 10 cents, let's say. So you get one track. Oh, yeah, I'll pay 10 cents to listen to this song. Yeah, cool. Instead of having to pay a monthly subscription to some music service you may or may not use. It'll all just be microservices that you pay for right at the time of consumption. We can't do that right now because the internet's certainly fast enough, but the fees are too high to do like a credit card and having moving money around like a PayPal or whatever to do microservices like that. So instead, we're stuck with paying some bulk monthly fee for stuff that we may or may not use. But you're starting to see all this fragmenting. You know, everybody's producing their own content now. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, even. Everybody's producing their, even Sony for PlayStation now, starting to produce their own content. Because it's all fragmenting to where eventually we'll get a place where we'll have this blockchain stuff. It's not about the money per se, but it's the ability to send things like a message back and forth and have it be true. So that I can send you a message or some piece of news, or money becomes a thing because you need to trust money. But this is anything. When I can send you an article and you know that the article is fucking true because every piece of it has been verified against something somewhere along the way, or I send you whatever and then you know that's not been copied or manipulated or has some Trojan horse put in it in a million different ways. So everybody's gotten wrapped up into this idea of the money side of it, when really Bitcoin and blockchain as a technology is here to replace the internet. Because the internet has turned into a shit show. It's turned into a very centralized place where Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they run the whole fucking thing. Where else do you go? If I told you you can't go to anywhere, any other websites than those, most people bitch for 5 minutes, and after that they'd be like, oh, I guess that's all I need. Man, that's worse than when I was a kid. I remember there was like 3 television channels on the TV before cable really existed. That's how the internet has become. The internet is much more. It's not what it meant to be. It's supposed to be much broader. You know, an exchange of ideas in lots of ways. So much bigger things it could be. And that's what's missing, because really Bitcoin, what it is a new infrastructure. It's a new infrastructure that we're going to be building on top of. So we don't argue about what kind of servers that Google uses in their server farm, or Amazon uses, or that Microsoft uses to keep our websites hosted. We don't give a shit, because it's a layer that we trust that just works. And we know that they've got it figured out because their stuff always works. That's what Bitcoin is. It's going to be a way that it's not a price that we look at and speculate upon. It's something that just exists as the electricity running through your wall or the internet connection coming in your house. It's just there. And you always tap into it when you need to know something. Instead of going to Google something, let's Bitcoin it. That won't ever be a term, but what I'm trying to get at here is that that's the idea. It's always a database for a source of truth. But as long as you have these assholes that keep trying to keep it like these small blocks in Bitcoin and keep the fees super high, so you can't have, they're trying to run it just like another central bank, another kind of credit card system that have high fees and all this shit. It won't work. It's got to be where I can send you a fucking penny, and it's a tiny little piece of a penny to send you that. That's the only way it's going to work. So what's happened with Bitcoin Cash, I had not been very involved with looking at any of that, because had thrown my hands up at the whole space and said, fuck it all. It's a lot. Some people need to go to jail, and there needs to be a lot of people lose a lot of money before this thing shifts. So that was the second thing that needed to happen, was I needed to see this whole crypto space fall apart and fail. And it's starting to happen, because what's happened now, and I found this article, it was such a huge revelation to me that there are other people that are actually thinking like me, or they're not thinking like me, at least understanding my position. This is huge. So what's happened now is that after that fork, then we have Bitcoin Cash that solved all these problems I talked about. But again, the same thing happened again. And this article lays out how Bitcoin Cash again became centralized, and it's not censorship proof anymore and all of that. So they had to have another fork. So what's happened very recently, just in the last few weeks, Bitcoin Cash forked into Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV, where SV stands for Satoshi Division. Again, sticking with the theme of maintaining, going to keeping with the original intention of the Satoshi's anonymous white paper, which is, it's the solution. When you read it, it's fucking brilliant. All of it is. There's a few problems with it that need to be solved, but it solves it. But what everybody tries to do constantly is take over and turn it into a new kind of centralized thing that they can all enrich themselves from. That shit's got to stop. It probably won't ever stop, but at least what's happening now is, at least one of the big things that's really made me positive about this again is that this last fork was that part of me was like, oh, fuck, another fork. This thing's just going to, all of this stuff's just going to keep forking until it's dead. Because eventually everybody splits up and you smaller and smaller groups, and everybody's got their own beliefs. It's like the Christian church. Like, how many kinds of denominations in the Christian church is it? That's exactly what's going on with Bitcoin. So many different versions, and all these people have their own denominations and beliefs around these things, where I was like, well, fuck it. This whole thing just needs to fail completely, and eventually somebody rebuild it again. But after reading this article, now I see that there is a group of people that believe exactly like I believe, are working on the central parts of this. This article is written by a guy who built, he says who he is. He built BitDB Network, which I'll show you in a second, and BitSocket, which is decentralized database and then a real-time message bus built on the back of Bitcoin, which is, it's basically the internet. I mean, what's the internet more than a database and a messaging system? Messaging system meaning your browser sends a message to the server, hey, send me these files, and then it sends it back and it displays it as a web page. That's a messaging system. So a message bus and a database is all you need for the new internet. And so these is the new two things power really the new internet based on Bitcoin, and they work. There's already sites running on and all those things. So he's the guy behind this. He gives us credibility. But then he goes into the part that really, really opened my eyes to this thing. And before I read this, I want you to understand that this was an impact to me, because this guy, even though some stuff I don't agree with him about, but what especially this part I'm about to read here, he understands the importance of capitalism on top of this stuff. Where you run into in the crypto space is a whole lot of guys that just want to control this little fiefdom of crypto to themselves, you know? And no, you can't be a dirty capitalist and come in and make money on top of this stuff. And then they get super defensive and like petty and all this stuff. So they hate marketers. And understandably, I understand like some of that, because marketers can mess things up by overstating things and building a bunch of hype and all this shit. It's already happened. We've seen the MLMs come in, the Bitcoin-based MLMs, you know, blow up and then fail and everybody loses money. That's what these guys hate. But what they don't realize is that they need the capitalist businesses to build on top of this, to build this infrastructure out. So this guy gets it. And he's one of the leaders in the Bitcoin Cash space that then pivoted to the BitcoinSV, which is a continuation of what I've already talked about with what Bitcoin is supposed to be. So now I'm going to read what this guy said. And you guys, I hope you read this entire article because it's just huge. But he says, I posted, so the title of this little section here is The Importance of Capitalists in Bitcoin. I posted a public message to Bitcoin application developers last week. So here he says, let me tell you guys a secret. Many of you have it completely backwards. You, the developers, are the emperors of Bitcoin. Think of Bitcoin as a nation. You are the capitalists who build the wealth of the nation of Bitcoin. Without you, the ones who create capital out of labor to increase the wealth of the nation of Bitcoin, there is no value in Bitcoin, because the wealth of Bitcoin as a nation comes from the utility you generate by building. It doesn't come from speculating. That's what I'm talking about. This is the same as social media. You could replace these words with Bitcoin with social media, the internet. The wealth of Facebook doesn't come from Facebook or building better tools on top of Facebook or speculating on Facebook. It comes on you building and putting your input and creative energy into it. That's what he's saying here. Same thing. Doesn't come from speculating. Stop thinking like a flower and start thinking like a follower and start thinking like a leader. Don't play the herd game. You are your own man. It is not about which chain to follow. It's about which chain you choose. There's a huge difference. Blockchain is a seller. You are the buyer. So what he's saying there is essentially, do you want to focus on building what you want to build on, instead of being a herd and saying, well, everybody's building on Facebook, so I'll go waste all my time building everything I can, all of my creative stuff, building on top of Facebook's, you know, vast array of technology suites that I could use. They have a lot of cool shit, but do I want to spend thousands, tens of thousands of hours and all my creative energy pouring into Facebook when tomorrow they could change the rules on me and then everything I did is worthless overnight? That's what he's talking about here, except he's just talking about blockchain. And that's what's happening. Developers are getting demoralized because that exact thing is happening. You build a lot of cool shit and you have one idea of building it, like blockchain. Some smart guys built this. You know, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. Smart people that know this stuff put a lot of energy into building it. And then some capitalists, you know, sharks come in and take over and then do all these things I've been talking about and then manipulate it, turn into something that wasn't meant to be. That's why these guys hate marketers, they hate capitalists, because that's what they think that everybody's going to do to this stuff. And so far they're right. And I agree with them. That's why I got censored on when I posted on Steemit, because I came as a marketer. I'm like, hey, let's launch this cool blah, blah, blah. And everybody looked at me and saw me as a marketer, and they censored me. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm with you guys. I'm trying to do something cool here. it's because they're so defensive of this, and it's happened, and they got a reason to be. But what he's saying is the developer, he's talking to programmers. This is a very tech-heavy article, by the way, but the developers are the ones that's building this, so you can choose where to go. So he's making the case to continue with Satoshi's vision and with the support of BitcoinSV, because it's the real Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a seller, you are the buyer. You have all the power in the world to choose, not follow. Dwell on this for as long as you can. Okay. For the FAQ, what chain does BitDB, BitSocket, BitQuery choose? All 4 nodes supported. I don't think. He chooses, it doesn't say here, but you can go to the FAQs on his own site. He chooses Bitcoin Cash, which, as you'll see in a second, has become BitcoinSV. You are the buyer, blockchains are the seller. Now, this is where it starts getting into really interesting stuff. The application developers are the capitalists of the nation of Bitcoin, and they are the ones who determine the wealth of the nation. Wise capitalists don't follow the herd. They notice opportunities and act on them. I've been saying this, that Bitcoin needs to attract application developers, and the only way to do so is signaling dedication to scalability, what I've been talking about, stability meaning one launch of a successful product like CryptoKitties with just a few thousand users can't shut down the entire internet, basically. And then openness, meaning you can't have it decentralized anymore, instead of adding some new feature from the beginning. So here we go. This is the next important part here. Now, this is where it really resonated with me. Is there something, so this is an interview that he did with somebody, I guess it doesn't matter. So the interviewer is saying, if there was something specific you wanted to add to the next hard fork, what would it be? So instead of adding some feature, what he says, he wants it to succeed. I think Bitcoin at this stage needs to focus on the application ecosystem growth instead of its own growth. That's exactly what needs to happen. Instead of worrying about making Bitcoin price go to 100,000, why don't you worry about building something cool on top of it that people actually use and be excited about? Because right now, the way it is right now, December, whatever today is, 12th, 2018, I can't think of one application that people would broadly say is a successful application that's running on blockchain anywhere. I mean, you could say maybe Coinbase. I don't know. They're an exchange, and they suck too. There's just nothing yet, because everybody's worried about growing blockchain instead of growing some sort of valuable feature built on blockchain, growing the ecosystem, making cool interfaces, making it fun. This is because I believe exponential growth will not come from individual merchant adoptions, but from entrepreneurs and developers building useful things on top of Bitcoin. There you go. Until then, it's just another futures contracts. It's just another derivative. It's just like every other manipulated piece of shit we already have in the world of digital finance. What he's saying is entrepreneurs are needed. I mean, that's where the capital comes from. That's where innovation comes from. People putting creative energy and money into building things. These people are good at creating exponential output from linear input. Therefore, they're the ones that Bitcoin needs to win trust from if it wants to grow most efficiently. And Bitcoin has not won trust from people like me, business innovators, entrepreneurs. It's starting to happen again. But so he continues here. So my humble opinion, the top priority for protocol changes to be the features that improve on these fronts, getting trust and attention from entrepreneurs and developers instead of individual users and merchants. Individuals, users, and merchants will follow when there are more useful things you can do with Bitcoin, more interesting, more fun, more useful. It's not such a pain in the ass to use. Until then, individuals only see Bitcoin as a speculative asset, no matter how many buzzworthy features it adds. And to win trust from these people, Bitcoin needs to show that it's scalable, stable, and permissionless. Permissionless means you can do what you want without somebody shutting you off or censoring you at some point. Without scalability, it's not so attractive to these people because they would rather spend their energy building things on other platforms, meaning regular ass websites, regular databases that are fast as fuck because they've got edge servers all over the world, versus a Bitcoin database that's slow as hell, takes forever to get confirmation. We'd rather build energy building things on other platforms that they can build exponentially from. That's the key. When I go to do something, I want the thing to go scale, man. I don't want to get 2 or 3 people to play around with it. Let's go get 1 million overnight. You can't do that on any of this blockchain stuff right now. It'll crash all of it. And it continues. And without the perception of permissionless innovation and stability, wise developers will not want to waste their energy building stuff on top of Bitcoin because they won't want to wake up one day to find out the rules of the game have changed overnight and all their efforts have gone to fucking waste. Nailed it right there. And this is where I really woke up. When this guy had this and it's highlighted here, they don't want to wake up one day and find that the rules of the game change overnight and all their efforts have gone to waste. That describes me to a T, man. This is why I've had such a struggle with the internet as it exists. I've built so many things, pushing the envelope, oh, cool, badass idea, get a whole bunch of people riled together and then run into some stupid roadblock, some third party somewhere who doesn't know me, I don't know them, and they got control of some little something. That's changing, thankfully. And indeed, it continues here, and indeed the rules of the game have changed in Bitcoin Cash. It's no longer the Bitcoin I signed up for. So then it continues on with the reasons, you know, and I'm not going to read them all here, but you can read the article below. But the point is, BitcoinSV is back to now what I think is a real crypto, and it's real Bitcoin. Bitcoin's battle tested. So even after all this SV split is successful. And I think it's now finally point now where I can finally go positive about this stuff and not talking shit about it so much and be able to start building on top of it again. So even outside of that, we got a lot of challenges to overcome in the next few years, but there's going to be something's got to give with these 3 things, and crypto at some point will step in and solve these issues in some way. And it's not going to be like some huge black swan event. It's just going to be incremental changes over the night or over time, the same way that the internet creeped into our lives. Crypto will do the same way. So we're almost 2 hours here, dude, and I pretty much covered everything that I've got. You got any questions you want to backfill any of this with?
Well, I want to make a comment, I guess. To be honest with you, the whole time you're talking, you're going super deep diving into it. And I'm like, honestly, part of me is thinking, oh, I don't really care. Frankly, I mean, because really, I mean, what I think of is the very short-term stuff. Like, well, the only reason I'm interested potentially in Bitcoin, and this is just me being brutally, ridiculously honest, is saying the only reason I'd be interested in Bitcoin is what can it give me right now. So you're actually, in a way, kind of asking us to take a paradigm shift, or at least me, to take a paradigm shift that Bitcoin isn't like a speculative investment more than it is a tool on the back of which we can build something awesome that can not only change the world, but can also make us money in the process.
Yep.
Right?
I mean, dude, look at it. Yeah, exactly. Look at it in terms of the internet. I mean, we saw the exact same thing with the rise of the internet happened with crypto, exact same stuff, blockchain specifically. We saw the early days of the internet, the early companies that came on board and got excited. They went and traded on the stock exchange, they did IPOs, and they started going crazy through the roof. Remember the crazy volatility and stuff?
Yep.
In the early .com days, and then it all crashed down, and then the real stuff got built on top of that. Same thing's happening now. It's just people think that the internet is just going to continue as it is and money's going to continue as it is. That's the big shift here, and that it's not. I mean, we're talking about a funnel shift, even bigger shift than the impact that the internet had on our lives. I mean, it's everything, I mean, it goes down to even how we produce as people, how we output our energy. People will be rewarded for it. A good example is people that make Hollywood movies. Do you know the writers that actually come up with all these things that actually give it any sort of life at all get paid almost nothing? And you know that they're the last people to get paid because, you know, all the promoters and the studios and all those people at the top get all the huge bulk of the money. I mean, below that are the actors. And of course, producers get their money first and then the actors. And then way down the line, you got all the people that made the movie, and all the way down the line, the very last people get paid is the writer. And by the time that's all filtered through, even these huge blockbuster movies, hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever that get created, billions of dollars get created. The one that actually came up with the idea and gave birth to the whole thing gets nothing. Sometimes literally nothing. In fact, did you know to this day that Demolition Man, remember the Demolition Man?
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone? To this day, at least the last time I checked, to this day, he's never been paid for that movie. And it's that same thing. You know, he's had lawsuits going on for 20 years, 20 plus years to get paid for that thing. Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is because the fundamental shift here is that the same things happen on the internet, where now the first ones to get paid is not us, the creators. Like, we come up with a brilliant post to put on Facebook, for example. It gets all kinds of likes and shares and reactions and views and wahs and all that stuff. People love it. Well, who gets paid? The first to get paid is Facebook, you know? And the second that gets paid is the person who's running the ads on Facebook, because they're making some money off of that. And then next to get paid is all the hosting companies that are hosting, you know, Facebook and all these other things, all these various layers. Well, the last to get paid is the creator. It means by the time it gets down to you, there's nothing left, and they're not trying to pay you anyway. So that whole paradigm is shifting, where the people that are actually creating and putting the energy into these things, musicians are going to love this, because finally the music industry has been killed by the internet, because songs can be so easily copied. What if all of a sudden a copy of a song has to be verified against a blockchain? It can't be copied. So you buy a song, it's the song, you know, it's yours. You know, you play it, you got to like ping the Bitcoin database. So what will happen is what happened is, as soon as you can pay to play, you know, it's like you want to play a song, you get one play, really, you know, and you don't get to download it and then copy it, send it to all your friends and put it on torrents, all that shit. You know, you get one play of it. You know, you pay 10 cents or whatever. Guess what? The bulk of that 10 cent is going to go straight to the songwriter, or straight to the artist, without any intermediate in the middle. That's straight peer-to-peer. And what's happened is that's shifting the entire paradigm of the way the entire fucking world runs. So all the middlemen in the middle, like agents and banks and whoever else you can define as a middleman between anything that you want to do, is getting kicked out because they're basically a bunch of leeches on the system, a bunch of vampires, and they need to learn how to produce instead of suck energy out of the system by just being in the fucking way. So that's what this solves, and that's why it's such a big deal, because it unwinds completely the way that we're used to doing things. And it's going to be huge for most people, but for a lot of people, it's going to wreck them. I mean, they're going to be out of business. I mean, just the way the internet killed the music industry and the way internet killed newspapers and other kinds of media, it's that big, but probably bigger, you know?
I would love to discuss and talk about, you know, obviously we could do video after video, or you know, show after show after show about Bitcoin. And I think we probably obviously should, but things I'd love to see, and I'm sure you got a million ideas there, you know, is, you know, how do we position ourselves? Like, you know, what the next step is to position ourselves to be a part of this new move of, you know, crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain, whatever. So, you know, obviously let's maybe revisit that at some point. Two, I wanted to just make sure we addressed at some point, if not today, at some point, Ryan, I think it had posted a bit of a question about very specific granular, like how to use a token for online membership, etc. And then Ken also asked specifically about oxproject.com.
Oh yeah, okay. So what was the first one? We'll go over these things. What was the first one you said?
Just like how to
How to
position
get
ourselves.
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk about over the coming weeks for sure, because I mean that's what this show is all about, is teaching things. Obviously, I talk about buying gold, and we'll talk about how to buy gold, and obviously buying crypto at some point. There's no reason not to make money on it, but now is not the time to buy it for sure. And I don't have any. I think I have one Bitcoin left just because I use it for testing and stuff, but I don't have any left. I think I have one Ethereum left too, I think, but I just when it comes time to buy, I'll certainly buy in, but I'm not into, I mean, I am into the speculative side because I'm still a trader, but to me, it's just a trade. And when the fundamentals are right for placing a trade, here's what will happen. It'll come down, it'll continue down, and there's going to have to be a big bounce up, and then I don't know what the word would be. I was going to say a reasonable, but what the hell does that mean? But it's some sort of measured pullback. It's not just like, whipsaw thing, but some sort of it's got to bottom out. It's somewhere between 0 and 1,000, I think, somewhere in there. Bottom out. Maybe I'll pick up some, right around 1,000, 1,500, whatever. But then, if it continues to go down, I got to wait to see for it to have a ride back up and then a pullback. Okay, because trades go in waves. So it'll have a big move down and then a bump up and then a little pullback. And that's where you get in, is on a pullback. Always happens. So the time will come for that. So that's one way. Buying gold's one way, getting on crypto at the right time. But then the other part of it too is just getting in on building cool shit on top of this stuff. So the cool thing is, well, let's talk about in a second, which I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't cover this just yet. We're not done because I wanted to cover BitDB. BitDB is the database I just talked about. That guy that wrote that article built this. He calls it random access memory for Bitcoin. Basically makes Bitcoin as a database, okay? That's cool. It gives you a source of truth so you can use a database just like you would use for any application. We can build all kinds of things. He's got a query engine that works just like SQL or SQL, some sort of structured query language. That's what SQL stands for. It gives you a way to have a database and store it on a blockchain so that it's not changeable, it's true. So, and then he's got BitSocket, which is a message bus, which is the ability to send data and events, again, across Bitcoin and logged on blockchains, so it's verifiable and true. So this sets up the ability to do all kinds of things, a whole new internet, really, that's trustworthy. So you can get involved by building things on top of it. And any guys that are involved in my show and any of my projects, I'm talking about what I'm building. You'll see what I'm building. You get to have the code, whatever. I keep it all open, whatever. So you can get involved that way and start getting, just digging into this stuff. This is very bleeding edge. It's very, very nerdy and technical as far as the coding side. But the other thing you can do is start getting involved in some of these sites. Like here's one, yours.org. I'll put this in the chat. Yours.org is really, really cool, man. This is one of these places you have to pay to post. It's a social media site, but it's powered by Bitcoin. You see, you earn Bitcoin for your content. So you can have a paywall, for instance. Let's just see what this first one is here. So he's got some content. This guy wrote a content about whatever. And then people can tip him right here. So you can tip him 10 cents. And this is Bitcoin. But it's 10 cents based on whatever the price is. And you have to have Bitcoin in your account to do it. And if you want to comment, you got to pay 5 cents. So this person that commented on here paid 5 cents to comment. Okay. Well, that 5 cents goes back to the person that wrote this article. So he's already got he's gotten $8, looks like, so far from 4 weeks ago. Now, that's not a lot. But that's $8 more than you get from posting it on Facebook. So that's where this is going, to where, so this guy can set up, there's other posts I saw where people can set up, let me refresh this, make sure we got the most fresh stuff here. Because there's a way that you could do a paywall. Yeah, here you go. So this guy's got I think this is the author of that article, this guy actually, sharp guy. But so with this one, you can, if you want to follow his live stream, you can pay 10 cents to go on his live stream. So he's directly monetizing his YouTube, his content. So you can do a paywall like that. And this is all with Bitcoin. So it's all peer-to-peer. There's no exchange in the middle. You're paying directly to the person. And then this site, yours.org, keeps 5% just for hosting the site. It's beautiful. This is the way this stuff's supposed to work. This is how Facebook and Twitter and all these things should work. So people are you got to pay to post content too. I think you have to pay $1 to post on here. Doesn't make sense that people would pay to post, except when you pay to post, the content is probably going to be good. Somewhat, So this is where this stuff's headed. So you can get involved by joining some of these sites and just start doing them. So yours.org is one. Here's another one called, where is it? It's not MemoPay. Shoot, I lost it already. Oh, here it is. It's on the other tab. Done. It's called Matter. Here's the URL. mttr.app is the URL. /home, I guess. But it's the same kind of thing. It's Matter is a decentralized blogging and social media community that's powered by Bitcoin Cash blockchain. So all action is stored on the blockchain, no back-end access to your keys. So what this means is this site is basically a shell of a site and doesn't work until you come in and provide your key, which then unlocks everything. And your keys and your access get stored in your browser. They're not stored on a server somewhere. So this site it doesn't know anything about you. It only knows you by what keys you enter. So this is where this stuff's headed. So you can see this stuff too. They got a little bit different model, but it's the same kind of idea. Paid content where you get paid to post. I like this yours.org. I'm probably going to model something like this for what we're doing internally. So look at this one, see what features you like about it if you want to get involved there and see where this stuff is headed. Because this is where everything is headed. I mean, this will be the future where you're paying to post or you're paying to comment. You won't even notice it because it'll be such a substrate layer, just like you pay for electricity or you pay for your internet connection. This internet connection that you're listening to my voice on is costing you a certain amount of pennies per minute. And you're paying it without thinking about it because it's already taken out of your bill or whatever else. That's how this stuff's going to be in the future, except the money will maybe be filtered back to the creators instead of to faces like Facebook and Silicon Valley, VC guys, So that's another way to get involved and check out some of these other projects that are in the articles I sent. So does that answer the question, Jason? Oh, so let's get back to this. So what is a quick overview? Ryan said, what's a quick overview example of how to use a token for an online membership or product upgrade extensions, etc. That's a deep subject, and I could talk for 3 hours about that alone. Let me do that in future stuff, because I'm going to show you how you do it whenever I get my own version of this working. I'll model it right in front of you, Ryan. You guys will see it on future shows. And you guys that are in any of my other programs, I'll be releasing the code for this stuff too, inside chatbot funnel system and other things. So what are your thoughts about 0x project? Yeah, I've looked at this thing. I mean, it's another decentralized, quote unquote, decentralized exchange. And I think it's cool. I don't think these guys are anything bad about them per se, but eventually everybody will be their own exchange. These guys are just leading the way. You got to realize you don't need a fucking exchange. That's the point here. There should be no central place where you got to go to. This is supposed to be permissionless. If you got to go to exchange and log in and ask them permission, and they got control of your account, which these decentralized ones supposedly don't or whatever. But the point is here, eventually this whole idea of exchanges and decentralized exchanges and DEXs and all this stuff, this is all just the bleeding edge stuff because that infrastructure isn't there where we're not paying attention to it anymore. This reminds me of the early days of the internet whenever we had to worry about the kind of modem that we had and the connection and how we had to dial into it, our location and where we dialed in. Remember that, Jason, how we had to be in a place where we had an 800 number or had to have a local number to connect to your ISP because you didn't want to pay long distance charges to connect to internet.
Yep.
Well, that's no different than these exchanges are doing now. They're just providing a gateway to the blockchain that that's not necessary. Because eventually you're going to have your own, you are the exchange. Every person is the exchange. That's what decentralized means. Now they're providing the code base, and a lot of this is just semantics really, but eventually all of us will be running something like this on our own devices. On our own little wallet / decentralized exchange that runs unique only for us, built on the fly with microservices. So you could open up your browser, and your browser will be able to fire up a little mini node of Bitcoin in the browser. And then you can verify against everybody else in the network. We're a long ways from that, obviously, but it's headed that way and fast. So I like these kind of projects for sure, but I just wouldn't get too heavy into it, because eventually this will just be an underground or underlayer technology you don't even see anymore. It's just every device you have is its own decentralized exchange. So it's cool. I mean, maybe they're building what could be running on everybody's device someday. Who knows? We'll see. But look for this stuff to go much lower before you start buying into it. I wouldn't be buying into this just yet, because it's not low enough. Yeah, it needs to go down at least to 1,000 in my view. So now, I could be wrong. Thing could go straight up tomorrow. I don't know, but according to Cliff High from his data set, he thinks it's going to go take off just before the halving event in 2020, which makes a lot of sense to me. So we've got some time to get involved and see how it shakes out and what really comes of this stuff. So we have plenty of time to get involved. I don't think there's any rush. I think we're really in the early days of all this. So you'll see, you guys have heard me talk about gold-backed cryptocurrency projects that I'm working on and are coming to the marketplace too, that will have its own place to play in all this stuff. We'll see. I mean, we've got a long ways to go. I just want you guys to be early on this. It's like the early days of the internet. I mean, it's cool. Think of what you know. If you knew now, like what if Amazon took off? Like what if you could have been Amazon or Google or one of these things if you'd just been early enough, That's the opportunity we've got. Right now, we need to all be working on a social media that's decentralized so we have everybody go away from all of that shit, and then we got our own. And, of course, the first one's there. Sell the picks and shovels, make a lot of money from that if money's your thing, which I like money. So that's where we're headed. That's what I'm going to be working on. That's how you guys can get involved in the future. And of course, you'll learn all about it through here. I'll show you everything I'm learning, especially through the yin yang financial system and the chatbot funnel system. We'll be deep in the code and that stuff too. All right. Well, thanks for the questions, guys. I appreciate it. Jason, if you don't have any, Marcin says, what do you think the timing's on where all this headed? How many years? Well, here's the thing. Nobody's going to change. Just like Jason said earlier, nobody really cares until you start having problems in your life. What we're talking about now is a little bit like trying to sell exciting insurance. It's very hard because people don't care until they're having a problem. Most people won't care about crypto until their money's not available in their fucking bank account. They just can't get to it anymore. And they're like, oh shit, now how do I get crypto? Don't be that person. I'm just giving you a heads up. So, we're years out from this stuff, but I think 2019 is going to be kind of a building year. You're going to see building of applications, networks, the backbone being solidified of Bitcoin. So I don't think as far as speculative things for cryptocurrency prices or anything, I don't think you're going to see much movement until late 2019. But in that meantime, you got the opportunity of, the gold mine is wide open. There's no door on it. Nobody gives a shit because of all of these things right now, because these guys that are building these things, like for this yours thing, for example, I think this yours thing is brilliant. But guess what these guys aren't? They're not marketers. They don't really know how to connect with people that well. So this can be much cooler. They can be much different experience. It can be gamified much better. Better just, without an emphasis on Bitcoin even. Because how about just a social network where you get, you can earn for posting, Anyway, that's what's going to be happening. And as far as timeline goes, I mean, it's technology adoption. I think we're going to have a similar growth as we had with the internet. So I see us right now kind of as at the mid stages of the equivalent time of the dot-com bust. So 2002, 2003-ish time frame in terms of comparing the internet to Internet 2.0, blockchain, Bitcoin. That's where I see us. So look at where the internet was at that time, 2002, 2003, which, I mean, 2003, I mean, Google hasn't even launched AdWords yet. So think about that. Just the advertising ideas. Oh, so that's one of the things I want to show you was this. Memo Pay. Run your ad campaign on Bitcoin Cash blockchain. These colors are terrible for trying to read, but this is an ad campaign. You run a campaign. This is self-serve. You name, company, ad message, date. You pay how many addresses to reach, and then you just self-serve, submit an ad. You pay Bitcoin Cash, and they've already delivered 40,000 messages. So here's an example of an ad. So this would be an example ad, and they have that CoinSpace. Well, it actually is an ad. That's a real ad, okay? It's CoinSpace. It's one of these click arbitrage sites, you know? So they ran an ad on here, and you can see all the clicks. It cost them 40 cents per click. That's not cheap, but you know, they got 2.5% click-through rate, which is fucking huge. In a regular ad campaign, if you get 0.2%, you're doing well. So 2.5% click-through rate, I'd pay 40% clicks. So they got, for that, they paid whatever they paid, and then they had 1,000 addresses reached. So that's pretty cheap. So it's all logged on blockchain. So that's the next step. I mean, this is becoming Google AdWords. It's becoming search engines. Think of the big media plays. There's so many things we can do, and I'll show you guys how to monetize this as we go along, because all you got to do is take what works on the internet right now and relaunch it on just changing channels. I mean, you just change a channel of something that's not so efficient in another place. I mean, it's the essence of arbitrage. So take something that's highly refined and not much room for growth in one channel, move it to another channel that's chaotic and got all kinds of room for growth. And then there's all kinds of the chaos in there that creates an opportunity to solve problems with existing things working in other places. So take social media, search engines, messaging of any type, a Slack. Think of a decentralized Slack that runs on Bitcoin that people would pay to post messages to. There's an infinite number of ways to do this. Add self-serve ad platforms that you can run various ways. So it's all coming. So that's my belief. I could all be wrong. This is my opinion, of course. Do your own research, but I believe that's where we are.